We have a Sky Sports senior football journalist, Pete Smith, joining us to look back at the game. Some might say it wasn't quite the spectacle befitting of a final, but what was that down to? Do you agree?
Yeah, it wasn't a classic, was it, Hayley? But Spurs fans won't care about that. And as we've seen from the celebrations from their players and fans this morning, yeah, they're just revelling in their success, aren't they? 17 long years for them. They got the job done. But yeah, it's a bit strange because these two managers, both hired on the back of brilliant attacking football in their previous jobs. So we can look at the match stats here and, well, for all of Man United's huffing and puffing, they didn't really get very far, did they? We can see they had 16 shots to Tottenham's 3. But obviously Tottenham scored with one of theirs and they actually had a better XG from their 3 shots than Man United did with their 16. When we spoke yesterday on the show about how Man United have been so effective in attacking areas in this competition against European sides, but as soon as they run up against a Premier League team, which bring a bit more intensity and organisation perhaps, Man United just really struggle. Højlund ineffective again, Mason Mount ineffective again. Bruno Fernandes playing that deeper role just couldn't make it work for Man United. Once Tottenham got that goal, and as we can see from this match momentum chart we've got here for you, once they got that goal, 42 minutes through Brennan Johnson, they were able to then just to hold on and really without too much. Obviously in that second half there was a couple of good saves from Vicario, that incredible clearance off the line from Van der Ven. But really, aside from that, it never really felt like Man United were really banging on that door hard enough to force their way through back into this match. And Tottenham, you know, in contrast to Ange Ball and this idea of attacking football for Ange Postecoglou, were quite happy to sit back, sit deep, and see it through and get their hands on that trophy.
Yeah, I mean, on that all season, both managers have insisted they'll stick to their style of play. Did we see Ange Ball get shelved though for this
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for this final, but also for the last few games in this competition, as it's become more and more imperative to Tottenham's season to get over the line in this competition because the Premier League form was so disastrous. We've seen Tottenham posting very low possession stats in these games against Frankfurt in the second leg there, in both games against Bodo Glimt, but particularly in the second leg away from home, and then against Manchester United. This 26.6% possession from Spurs, opt to say that's the lowest recorded in a European final since they've been recording that since 2010.
Wow.
So, you know, you think over 15 years of European finals, that's the lowest possession we've seen by a team in a final, which is really striking. And I think back to when I interviewed Ange Postecoglou when he first arrived, and there was a line that he said to me, "I'll never hold on to a 1-0 win. We'll always be attacking, always go for it." But clearly he's got pragmatic. Amorim stuck to his idea of this system that he wants to play. And it's obviously Postecoglou who's come through and delivered. And we can see here also the commitment across the team to defending that lead once Johnson had scored. Romero, he had a real battle, didn't he, with Maguire towards the end of the match as Maguire came forward. But top for clearances for him. Solanke, the striker, winning the aerial duels. Udogie winning the tackles down that side. Ahmad gave him problems in the first half, but he really battled back into that competition and won that battle in the end, I think. And Van der Ven, we mentioned his brilliant clearance, but he was also top for block shots in this game. So a huge team effort from Tottenham. And as I say, maybe not free-flowing, brilliant football, but they don't care about that.
OK, despite his critics, Postecoglou, he's been adamant he wins trophies in his second season. So let's hear what he had to say way back in September.
Are you seeing enough in this side that this season you do think that they will be a side that can win? I'm talking silverware.
Yeah, absolutely.
Competing right at the top.
Am I going to answer the question or are you going to keep asking it? No, absolutely. And I think I'll correct myself. I don't usually win things. I always win things in my second year. Nothing's changed.
And you're confident you can do that with this side? You're seeing enough?
Well, I just sort of said it now, so I don't say things unless I believe them.
Well, Ange Postecoglou adamant back then that he was going to win in his second season, or at least he always had done in the past, and now he has done with Tottenham as well. And we can see here his record in second seasons, delivering trophies for his team. The Europa League for Tottenham. With Celtic, he did the treble in his second year there, having already had success in his first season. With Yokohama, he won the J1 League out in Japan. With Australia, he won the Asian Cup there, a national team competition there. And back in his native Australia with the Brisbane Roar and South Melbourne, he had success in his second season. It's a pattern that's run right throughout his career, and he's delivered again for Tottenham in his second season.
He absolutely has. What about, we're going to switch to Manchester United. We spoke about just how key Bruno Fernandes was to United. Did he fail to get the best out of him, do you think?
I think it's an interesting one because I was stood here yesterday, Hayley, and tried to pick what I thought the Man United team would be, and it was that Bruno Fernandes would go into central midfield with Casemiro and have Mount as one of those attackers. But in hindsight, could Fernandes have been further up the pitch to be a bit more effective? We can see with his quality, he still had an influence on the game to some extent. He still had more shots than any of his teammates. He still created more chances than any of his teammates. And look, with his interceptions and tackles as well, he contributed as well. And his touches figure was fairly high as well, although sometimes for him that can be much higher. I think in hindsight, I wonder if Amorim might think, could he have started Ugarte in midfield with Casemiro to get Fernandes higher up the pitch and around Højlund to try and create a little bit more? Because I think this is a frustrating one for Fernandes and for Man United. In the last Europa League final against Villarreal, which Man United lost on penalties a few years ago, he didn't create a single chance in that game. That was a frustrating one for him. I'm sure he would have wanted to go into this, another big European final, and make his mark, but he wasn't able to.
Yeah, we're wondering what's happening for him in the future. I'm sure United fans desperate to keep hold of him, but money talks as well. And there were some interesting comments, weren't there, after the game? There
were. This is what he had to say after the game. The day the club thinks I'm too much or it is time to leave, football is like that and you never know. If the club thinks it is time to leave because they want to make some money, that is what it is. And football is like that sometimes. Now, there's been speculation that clubs in Saudi Arabia might be thinking about a bid for him this summer. But he also said, as part of this interview, that he's desperate to return Man United to their former glories, that really his desire is to build this club back up. But I think he understands, and we all know about the financial situation for Man United, and we know about the ramifications of not being in the Champions League and how Sir Jim Ratcliffe has spoken about the huge amount of money they're losing and the cuts they've had to make to staff and facilities at Man United and how they're having to try and rebuild things and sort of launch these revenues again. And maybe, if a big bid does come in for Fernandes, he's hinting there that it might be difficult for Man United to turn down, but his future is uncertain. And he's not alone in that either. There's other players, aren't there? Yeah, other players, and maybe even the manager as well. Ruben Amorim claimed himself he'll walk away from the club if he's not wanted by the board or the fans. It's been a very difficult start for him, hasn't it? It has, Ruben Amorim, definitely. I think you think about where he was when he came in and the promise and the brilliant record he'd got at Sporting and this idea that he would take this team really struggling under Erik ten Hag at the start of this season, after winning the FA Cup at the back end of Man City in the hope that that gave them. But then we can see his record, well, it's not really improved at all. In fact, have Man United gone backwards under Amorim compared to ten Hag? It looks that way, Hayley, because we look at goals scored. They were scoring more goals under ten Hag. Across 90 minutes on average. They were creating more chances under Ten Hag. Yes, their possession stats have edged up a little bit under Ruben Amorim, but they're also conceding more. The amount of passes, again, is up slightly, but in terms of the effectiveness, they had more shots per game under Ten Hag. And final third passes, they were much more active in the final third as well under Erik ten Hag. This has not gone to plan at all for Ruben Amorim. We know where they are in the league, way down in 16th spot. No trophies to show for it, and that's something that Erik ten Hag could always hold up in both of his seasons in charge, the Carabao Cup and then the FA Cup. Put silverware in the trophy cabinet for Man United, and I wonder what he thinks looking on at his successor and the difficulties that he's faced this year. I think, for Amorim, we should say he only had one player signed for him in January, Udogie, the left wing back, and he's operating with a team built for this man. £600 million spent for this man. To play a 4-3-3 setup, and of course we know Amorim's system's very different to that. But then is that an issue and a problem, a mistake made by those higher up, making the change after just 9 games this season, after backing him in the summer, bringing Amorim in and getting him to work with these players who don't look at all suited to the way that he wants to play the game? Some interesting comments from another United player, weren't there, after the game? Garnacho, what he's had to say. Yeah, so this is speaking to Argentinian media, I understand, and he says, obviously it's hard for everyone. We didn't beat anyone in the league. We lacked a lot of things. When you don't score goals, you always need more. Until we reached the final, I played every round and I played 20 minutes today. I don't know, I'm going to try and enjoy the summer and see what happens next, which is intriguing final line there, isn't it? What's going to happen to this player? 20 years old, Garnacho. Interesting, he qualifies as homegrown. We talk about Man United looking to raise money. If they sold Bruno Fernandes, if they sold him, all of that money would go down as pure profit. These things we're learning through FFP and PSR and these new regulations and rules, suddenly a player like him has a lot of value to Man United in the transfer market in terms of selling him. But you know, he is right. He has had his influence on this cup run. He had assists against Real Sociedad in both legs. He had an assist against Lyon. He's had fewer starts in the Premier League, and his goal involvement numbers have gone down a touch in the Premier League. So he's not been at his brilliant best, but say 20 years old, he's still got potential. And we saw when he came on last night, taking Mason Mount's spot, he had a vicious shot from the left side, which Vicario had to save. And he looks like he was going to bring more to that final stage of the game than Mason Mount was, because we see the stats here between them. Mason Mount, 70 minutes on the pitch, no shots, no chances created, just 11 passes and 25 touches of the ball. And you think of all the possession that Man United had, Mason Mount just couldn't get into the game at all. And yet Garnacho, when he comes on for his 20 minutes, he has that shot that I mentioned that Vicario had to save really well. He created a chance for his teammate. He put in a couple of crosses, which Mount didn't do throughout his whole time on the pitch, and he was a bit sharper with his passing as well, Alejandro Garnacho. So from his perspective, you can see why he would be so frustrated that he didn't get as much game time on the pitch as he would have wanted to influence that result for United last night.
OK, thanks for that for now, Pete.